The planet Eldrath was once a bright and powerful world, filled with green valleys and glowing rivers of magic, but now it was falling apart. Storms of ash moved across the sky like dark waves, shaking the mountains and tearing open the ground. The air felt heavy, as if the world itself was tired. Even the dragons, the oldest and strongest beings of Eldrath, could feel that their home was slipping away from them. The dragons had lived on Eldrath for thousands of years. They had watched the rise of forests, the shifting of oceans, and the birth of new stars above their cliffs. They believed their magic would always keep the world safe. But now, the ley lines that carried the planet's energy were breaking. Glowing cracks spread across the ground like veins of fire, and the elders knew that these signs meant something terrible. In the great hall of stone wings, a large gathering of dragons sat in silence. Their scales shimmered weakly in the dim light, and their wings folded tightly against their bodies. No one wanted to speak first. Even the young dragons sensed the fear in the air. The ground trembled again, dust falling from the ceiling, reminding everyone that time was running out. Elder Virith, the oldest dragon in the hall, lifted his head. His voice was deep, slow, and worn by age. He told them that their magic was losing its strength. They had tried to heal the ley lines for years, pouring their power into the earth, but nothing worked. The world was too unstable. The planet's core was breaking apart. Many dragons lowered their heads. The idea of losing their home felt impossible, yet they could not deny the truth. Whenever they flew above their lands, they saw forests turning to dust, rivers boiling from underground heat, and mountains collapsing under their own weight. Sereth, a young dragon with bright blue scales, asked what they should do now. Her voice shook slightly. She had never seen the elders look so uncertain. Norin, her friend, tried to appear calm, but even he could not hide the worry in his eyes. Elder Virith said that he had one idea left, a desperate idea that the council had avoided for years. The dragons leaned forward, listening closely. He explained that long ago humans had visited their world. The dragons had seen them as fragile creatures with small bodies and short lives. Most dragons believed humans could not survive the strong magic of Eldrath. But Virith continued. He said that humans had something the dragons did not, a different way of thinking. Humans understood machines, structures, and the ground beneath their feet in ways dragons never cared to study. While dragons used magic to shape the world, humans used knowledge and tools. And maybe, just maybe, the world needed something other than magic now. When Virith said they should look for a human to help them, the hall erupted in confusion. Some dragons hissed in disbelief. Others shook their heads or beat their wings in frustration. Asking a human for help felt like admitting weakness. Dragons were proud creatures. They were used to protecting others, not relying on outsiders. Kaylee's, a young but respected dragon, stepped forward. She said that pride would not save their world. She reminded them all that the storms were getting worse and the ley lines were collapsing faster each day. If there was even a small chance that a human could help, they had to try. Slowly, the hall grew quiet again. The dragons looked at each other, realizing how desperate their situation truly was. They could not ignore the truth. Their magic was failing, and the world would soon crumble. Elder Virith ordered that a scouting group be sent out immediately. They would search for any sign of human life. Dragons had seen strange lights falling from the sky weeks ago. Maybe a ship had crashed. Maybe a human had survived. Sereth and Norin volunteered at once. Kaylee's joined them, spreading her wings with firm resolve. The three dragons left the hall as the ground rumbled again. They knew the world might not last much longer. As they soared into the ash-colored sky, the wind carried sparks of burning earth beneath them. Mountains split open below, and rivers of molten stone ran across the land. They could see the world breaking piece by piece, and it filled their hearts with a heavy sadness. But they also carried a small hope. Somewhere on this dying planet, maybe a human had survived. Maybe someone out there could help them understand what was happening to Eldrath. Maybe someone with a different mind and different skills could see a solution that dragons had missed. As the dragons flew toward the distant crash site, the world trembled again. The sky glowed with red lightning. And yet, for the first time in many seasons, the dragons dared to believe that help might be possible. This small hope kept them flying through the choking winds and falling ash. They knew they were racing against time. If they failed, Eldrath would fall apart completely. But if they succeeded, maybe their world could still be saved. The three dragons flew through the dark and broken sky, moving as fast as they could. Sereth led the way, her blue scales giving off a soft glow that helped them see through the thick ash. Norrin followed close behind, weaving carefully around falling stones and bursts of hot steam rising from cracks in the ground. Kayleigh stayed above them, keeping watch for danger from the sky. The world beneath them looked worse than it had only days before. Forests were no longer green. The trees were turning black, breaking apart like burned paper. Rivers that once sparkled with magic now ran thick and muddy, shaking as energy surged beneath the surface. Mountains trembled and split open, spilling fire into the air. Sereth felt her chest tighten every time she looked down. This was the land she had grown up in. She had flown over these forests as a hatchling, playing with the wind. Now those same places looked like scenes from a nightmare. Norrin tried to stay focused on the mission, but he could not help feeling the same fear. He kept glancing at the horizon, where a thin column of smoke rose straight up into the sky. That was their target, the crash site. Weeks ago, dragons had seen a bright streak falling from the stars, crashing into the far lands. No one had gone to investigate because the storms were too dangerous. But now they had no choice. Kayleigh flew down closer, shouting over the roaring wind. She told them to conserve their strength and stay alert. The storms were growing stronger the deeper they flew into the broken lands. A sudden blast of lightning struck the ground near them, shaking the air. Sereth wobbled and almost dipped too low, but Norrin steadied her with a gentle wing brush. Kayleigh roared into the sky, trying to push the storm back with her magic, but the magic barely made a difference. That frightened all of them. Dragons had always controlled the skies. Now the skies were turning against them. After hours of struggling through the storm, the winds finally began to calm. The dark clouds thinned enough for the dragons to see the land below more clearly. The crash site was close. They circled slowly as they approached. The air was strangely quiet here, almost too quiet. The ground around the crash site had been torn open where the ship hit. Pieces of metal were scattered everywhere, some still glowing from heat. The ship itself lay half-buried on its side, smoke rising from broken panels. Sereth landed first, her claws sinking into the soft, cracked earth. Norrin and Kayleigh landed beside her. All three dragons folded their wings and took slow steps toward the wreck. It did not look like any ship they had seen before. The dragons had seen human ships from afar in the past, tall metal structures that hovered with strange energy. But this ship was smaller, thinner, and shaped like a curved blade. Parts of it had symbols scratched into the metal. The dragons did not understand human writing, but they could tell this craft was meant for research, not battle. Norrin sniffed the air. He could smell faint traces of human scent, mixed with smoke and burning wires. Someone had survived. Or at least someone had been alive not long ago. Kayleigh signaled for the others to stay quiet. She pushed aside a fallen metal beam with her tail. Behind it, a small tunnel led into the broken ship. Sereth lowered her head and peered inside. She saw flickering lights and a strange humming sound. Something inside the ship was still working. Then she heard it, a faint cough. Her heart jumped. She pulled back and whispered to Kayleigh and Norrin that there was someone inside. Kayleigh stepped forward first. She was the calmest among them and the best at speaking gently. She lowered her head to the opening and spoke softly, explaining that they were here to help. For a moment there was no answer. Then a weak voice called out. It sounded frightened but alive. "Please? Is someone out there?" The dragons exchanged looks. Norrin moved closer to widen the tunnel with his claws. Metal screeched, sparks flying, but he tugged carefully so he would not harm whoever was inside. Soon the opening was large enough for someone to crawl through. A man appeared at the entrance, pulling himself forward with shaky hands. He was covered in dust and cuts. His clothes were torn, His breathing was unsteady, but he was alive. He looked up at the three dragons, his eyes wide with fear and confusion. Sereth expected him to scream or run, but instead he just stared with a tired, almost relieved look. Kayleigh lowered her head again and introduced herself gently. She told him they meant no harm and only wanted to help. He gave a weak nod. My name is Ryan Cole," he said softly. "I thought I was the only one left." Norrin stepped closer and asked if there were others on the ship. Ryan shook his head. He said he had been part of a small research mission studying unstable planets. When the storms hit, the ship lost control and crashed. He survived only because his chamber had sealed itself. Sereth asked him if he could walk. Ryan tried to stand but nearly collapsed. Kayleigh quickly extended her wing to support him. She told him that their world was dying and they needed help. Ryan looked surprised. He seemed unsure how he could help a planet full of dragons. But he did not refuse. He simply nodded and said he would try. The dragons knew they had found the one they were looking for. Whether Ryan could truly save their world or not, they had no choice but to believe in him. As Kayleigh lifted Ryan gently onto her back, the ground shuddered again. The dragons spread their wings. They had to return home quickly. Time was running out for all of them. The flight back to the dragon sanctuary was slow and careful. Kayleigh carried Ryan gently on her back, spreading her wings wide to keep him steady. Sereth and Norrin flew close on each side, ready to catch him if he slipped. The winds were calmer now, but ash still drifted across the sky like dark snow. Ryan held tightly to the ridge of Kayleigh's neck. Every time she shifted her wings, he felt the powerful muscles move beneath her scales. He had never imagined riding a dragon in his lifetime. Even in his injured state, he could not help staring at the world below with a mix of fear and amazement. From above, he could see long cracks in the ground glowing with bright red light. He asked Kayleigh in a weak voice if the planet had always looked like this. Kayleigh shook her head slowly. She told him that Eldrath used to be calm and full of life, but the land had changed faster than any dragon could understand. Sereth flew slightly lower, keeping an eye on the ground. She often looked back at Ryan, making sure he was still awake. Norrin stayed above them, scouting ahead for dangerous storms. When the sanctuary finally came into view, Ryan gasped softly. The place looked like a giant stone valley surrounded by tall cliffs. Glowing lines of old magic were carved across the rocks, but even from a distance he could see that many of these lines were cracked or fading. As the dragons approached, dozens of others rose from the valley floor. Some flew up to greet Kayleigh and her group, while others stayed farther back, watching carefully. None of them had expected to see a human riding on the back of one of their kind. When Kayleigh landed, many dragons stepped back in surprise. The elders were already waiting, their eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. Elder Virith stepped forward, lowering his head as he examined Ryan. Ryan slid off Kayleigh's back with her help. He stood shakily, balancing on the uneven ground. All around him, dragons of different colors and sizes stared at him in silence. He could feel their worry, confusion, and curiosity. He swallowed hard. He did not know what to say or do. The dragons looked powerful enough to crush him without effort. Sereth approached him gently. She introduced him to the elders, telling them that he was the only living human they had found. Norrin explained that Ryan had survived in the ship by chance and that he knew something about planets. Elder Virith lowered his head until his eyes were level with Ryan. His voice was deep and slow as he asked Ryan if he understood what was happening to their world. Ryan took a moment to gather his strength. He explained that he had studied unstable planets before. He told them that Eldrath was experiencing something that looked like a planetary core destabilization. The energy inside the world was shifting too fast, breaking the surface and causing the storms. Some dragons exchanged uneasy looks. They had always believed that their magic kept the world stable. Hearing a human explain their planet in a simple, logical way felt strange to them. Virith asked Ryan if the world could be saved. Ryan did not want to give them false hope. He said that he needed to study the ground, the cracks, and the energy patterns. He also needed to understand how dragon magic worked, since it seemed linked to the planet's natural structure. Kayleigh stepped closer, telling the elders that Ryan was willing to help. She reminded them that they had no other choice. Their magic had failed. The storms were getting worse. For a moment, the elders said nothing. Then Elder Virith nodded. He said that if Ryan could help, the dragons would give him anything he needed. Ryan felt a wave of relief, but he also felt the weight of responsibility settle on him. He was only one human with limited tools. Saving a planet full of dragons was far more than he had ever imagined doing. The dragons guided him to a sheltered area inside the sanctuary. Healers approached, carrying glowing stones and bowls of warm water. They tried to treat his wounds. Ryan was surprised by how gentle they were. Their claws were huge, but they moved with soft care, as if afraid to hurt him. While he rested, Kayleigh stayed close, answering his questions. He asked about ley lines, magic, and how the dragons had tried to heal the planet. She explained everything she knew, even the parts that made her voice shake. Ryan listened carefully. He could see that the dragons were desperate but hopeful. They wanted to believe that someone could save their world. As the day passed, more dragons visited to look at him. Some stayed far away, unsure of him. Others came closer out of curiosity. Ryan never raised his voice. He spoke calmly and clearly, even when he was afraid. Norrin watched from a distance. He whispered to Sereth that the human was different from what he expected. Sereth nodded, saying she felt the same. Ryan did not act proud or angry. He acted like someone who cared. Later that night, Elder Virith returned to Ryan's resting place. He asked if Ryan believed they still had a chance to save the world. Ryan looked up at the Elder Dragon with tired but steady eyes. He said that he did not know for certain, but he promised he would try. That was all the dragons needed to hear. In the quiet night, as storms rumbled far away, hope began to grow in the hearts of dragons who had nearly given up. Ryan woke early the next morning, though he had barely slept. The dragons had given him a warm place to rest inside a small stone chamber shaped by magic. Glowing crystals hung from the walls, giving off a soft light that reminded him of sunrise. His body still ached, but he felt strong enough to start working. Kayleigh was waiting outside when he stepped out. She lowered her head in greeting and asked if he felt ready. Ryan nodded. He told her that time was slipping away, and the planet could not wait for him to recover fully. Kayleigh guided him to a wide platform carved into the cliff. From there, he could see the vast land stretching far into the distance. Even from this high vantage point, he could see the cracks spreading across the ground and the smoke rising from broken mountains. Norrin and Sereth joined them. They had brought pieces of metal and equipment salvaged from the crashed ship. Ryan knelt beside the items, sorting through them slowly. Many pieces were burned beyond use, but some still held power. He explained that with these parts, he might be able to build tools that could help him analyze the planet's condition. Sereth asked him how tools could fix something as big as a world. Ryan smiled gently and said that tools alone could not fix it, but they could offer answers. With answers, he could make a plan. He began by asking the dragons to take him to the places where the ley lines were strongest. The dragons exchanged worried looks. Those places were unstable and dangerous. Flames burst from the ground without warning, and the air trembled with strange energy. But Ryan insisted. He needed to see the problem up close. Sereth offered to carry him. She was the lightest of the three and could maneuver quickly in dangerous areas. Ryan climbed carefully onto her back, holding onto the smooth edge of her scales. As they flew across the land, Ryan took notes on a small tablet he had recovered from the ship. The screen flickered now and then, but it still worked well enough. The first ley line site was a valley once filled with glowing streams. Now it was dry, cracked, and filled with drifting ash. The energy lines that ran under the surface flickered like dying lanterns. Ryan climbed down from Sereth's back and knelt beside a glowing crack. The heat burned his skin even from a short distance. He held a small device near the crack. It beeped rapidly, its light turning red. He frowned. He told the dragons that the planet's energy was not just leaking out, it was being pulled in too many directions at once. Something was breaking the balance. Norin asked if the planet was sick. Ryan thought about it and nodded. Yes, in a way the planet was sick. He asked the dragons to take him to other sites. They flew from one place to another, each location worse than the last. Rivers boiled, mountains shook, and the air was filled with strange humming sounds. Ryan studied everything carefully. He took samples, measured energy flows, and tried to understand the pattern. By the time they returned to the sanctuary, Ryan was exhausted. His clothes were covered in dust and ash, and his hands were burned from touching rocks that were too hot. Kaylee's helped him down from Saratha's back. The elders gathered around him. They asked what he had discovered. Ryan took a deep breath. He explained that the ley lines were collapsing because the planet's core was unstable. The core was producing too much energy, and the energy had nowhere to go. The dragon's magic had slowed the collapse for many years, but now the imbalance was too great. Elder Virith asked if the world was beyond saving. Ryan shook his head. He believed the world could still be saved, but they needed to rebuild the ley line structure. If they could redirect the energy properly, the core would stabilize. Several dragons murmured in confusion. They did not understand how a human could repair something that even their magic could not fix. Ryan explained his plan in simple terms. He would build stabilizers, devices that could channel and shape energy. The dragon's magic could power these devices, guiding the energy back into balance. It would not be easy, and it would require dragons to work closely with him. Kaylee's listened carefully. She asked how many stabilizers they needed. Ryan said he was not sure yet, but he needed to build at least one prototype. Norin volunteered to help gather materials. Sarath offered to search for more pieces from the crashed ship. Other dragons stepped forward, offering their claws, wings, and strength. Ryan felt a surge of hope in his chest. The dragons were trusting him, even though they barely knew him. He began working right away. He set up a small workspace near the glowing crystals. Dragons brought him tools, metal scraps, and energy stones. He worked for hours, carefully fitting pieces together and testing every part. Kaylee stayed close, watching him with quiet curiosity. As night fell, the first prototype began to take shape. It was a tall, thin device made of metal and glowing stone. It hummed softly, responding to the energy around it. Ryan stepped back and wiped his forehead. He told the dragons that this was only the beginning. They would need to test the device in one of the dangerous areas. Kaylee's nodded and told him she would go with him. Norin and Sarath also stepped forward. Ryan looked at the three dragons and felt something he had not felt since the crash: confidence. He was not alone. He had allies, and together they would try to save the world. The morning sky over Eldrath was a strange mix of gray clouds and burning red streaks. The world shook in small tremors that came and went like uneven breaths. Ryan stood near the cliffside platform with the stabilizer prototype resting beside him. He checked the device again and again, making sure every part was working. He knew it was not perfect, but they could not wait any longer. Kaylee's landed beside him, her wings stirring dust as they folded neatly along her sides. She asked if he was ready. Ryan said he was as ready as he could be. Norin and Sarath soon arrived, carrying small tools, energy stones, and pieces of metal, just in case something broke during the journey. The dragons gathered around him. Elder Virith stepped forward and told them that this mission would be dangerous. The Heartfire Chasm, where they were headed, was the most unstable place in all of Eldrath. Violent eruptions shook the ground every few minutes. But the energy there was closest to the planet's core. That was where the stabilizer needed to be placed. Ryan climbed onto Kaylee's back. He held the stabilizer tightly in his arms. Kaylee spread her wings, and with a powerful leap, she took to the sky. Norin and Sarath flew beside her, their wings cutting through the smoke-filled air. As they flew, the land below changed quickly. The green plains near the sanctuary gave way to cracked earth and glowing rivers of molten rock. Mountains shook as if trying to stand on unsteady legs. Lightning bolts shot upward from the ground instead of down from the sky. Ryan had seen dangerous planets before, but nothing like this. He felt the heat rising even from high above. He held tightly to Kaylee's as she dipped lower to avoid falling debris. Norrin roared a warning when a large piece of burning rock shot upward. Kaylee's dodged sharply, and Ryan nearly slipped. Sereth flew close and steadied him with her wing. Finally, the Heartfire chasm came into view. Ryan felt a wave of fear wash over him. The chasm was massive. A deep, endless pit splitting the earth open like a wound. Bright energy shot up from the depths, lighting the sky with white and gold flashes. The ground around the chasm cracked and shifted constantly. Kaylee's landed a safe distance from the edge. The ground shook with every step they took. Ryan climbed down carefully, holding the stabilizer close to his chest. The heat from the chasm made his skin sting. He asked the dragons to help him carry the remaining tools. They placed them gently around a large rock where he could work. He took a deep breath and began setting up the stabilizer. Norrin watched over the chasm while Sereth guarded Ryan's supplies. Kaylee stayed close to Ryan, ready to help however she could. Every few minutes, a burst of energy shot up from the pit, forcing them to step back. Ryan placed the stabilizer at the very edge of the chasm. He connected wires, adjusted the energy stones, and checked each panel. His hands were shaking. Sweat dripped down his face. Kaylee's asked if he was all right. Ryan said he was, but he needed to concentrate. Suddenly, the ground beneath them shook with a violent force. A massive eruption blasted out of the chasm, sending rocks flying in every direction. Norrin shouted a warning and shielded Ryan with his wings. Sereth flew upward, dodging falling debris. One large stone crashed onto the stabilizer, bending one of its metal arms. Ryan shouted in frustration and ran to check the damage. The device still worked, but it was unstable. He told Kaylee's he needed to repair it now or everything would fail. Kaylee's lowered her wing, offering him a platform. Ryan climbed onto it and leaned over the device, working as fast as he could. The heat was almost unbearable. The metal burned his fingers, but he pushed through the pain. Another eruption shook the ground. This time the tremor knocked Ryan off balance. He slipped forward, his foot landing dangerously close to the edge of the chasm. Kaylee's lunged, grabbing him by the back of his shirt with her claws, pulling him to safety. Ryan gasped for breath, shaken but alive. He looked up at her with gratitude, then turned back to the stabilizer. He made the final adjustments. "It's ready," he said softly. He pressed the activation switch. The stabilizer lit up with a bright, steady glow. Thin beams of light extended downward, forming lines that reached deep into the chasm. The beams connected with the energy inside the planet, creating a web-like pattern. For a moment, everything went silent. The ground stopped shaking. Even the sky seemed to pause. Then the stabilizer pulsed with a soft hum. The energy lines brightened, spreading across the cracked ground. Ryan smiled weakly. It was working, but the success came with a cost. He stumbled backward and collapsed, exhausted. The heat, the stress, and the injuries from earlier were too much. Kaylee's rushed to his side. Norrin and Sereth hurried over, looking worried. Ryan whispered that they needed to get away from the chasm. The stabilizer would take time to fully connect with the planet's energy. If they stayed too long, the next eruption could be deadly. Kaylee's gently lifted him onto her back. The dragons spread their wings and took off just as the ground behind them cracked open again. As they flew away, Ryan looked back. The stabilizer's glow shone steadily, like a small star fighting against the darkness. He hoped it would be enough to save Eldrath. He hoped they still had time. Ryan, Kaylee's, and the dragons reached the deepest section of Heartfire Chasm just before dawn. The red glow of the unstable core flickered like an open wound in the earth. Every few seconds, a violent tremor shook the stone under their feet. The dragons braced their claws to keep balance, and Ryan leaned on Kaylee's for support. The air burned with heat, yet Ryan pushed forward, knowing they had no time left. The stabilizer parts had been rebuilt after the last eruption, but this version was rough and fragile. Ryan knew it might not survive another blast, but he had no choice. He checked each piece carefully, adjusting the metal plates with tools he had reshaped from the wreckage of his ship. Norin, one of the guardians, watched the ground with worry. He spoke softly, trying to keep calm. The chasm expands every hour. If it widens again, we may not be able to fly out. Ryan nodded. Then we finish before that happens. We have to. Kaylee's lowered her head beside him. We will protect you. Do what you must. Ryan set the stabilizer frame on a narrow ledge close to the swirling energy streams of the core. The heat washed over him in waves, and sweat ran down his face. He ignored the discomfort and attached the cables, linking each one to a glowing fissure in the stone. The stabilizer needed direct contact with the ley lines to work. Almost, he whispered. A sudden eruption of fire shot upward from the chasm, forcing everyone back. The blast sent shards of molten rock through the air. Norin shielded Ryan with his wings, taking the brunt of the impact. His scales glowed red from the heat, but he remained firm. Go, Norin urged, breathing heavily. Finish it. Ryan returned to the frame, but he noticed something that made his heart sink. One of the crystal regulators, the most important piece, had cracked during the eruption. Without it, the stabilizer would fail. He checked his pack, hoping for a spare, but there was none. The last regulator they had was already installed, and this crack meant it could shatter under energy pressure. Kaylee saw the look in his eyes. What is wrong? The regulator might break when the stabilizer activates, Ryan said quietly. Someone needs to hold it in place until the system balances. Kaylee stepped forward without hesitation. I will do it. No, Ryan said quickly. The energy could tear through you. I can't ask you to do that. Kaylee looked at him with steady eyes. You did not ask. I offer. Before Ryan could argue, the ground shook again. Stronger this time. Another eruption was building. They had seconds left. Ryan knew he could not risk Kaylee's life. He moved toward the regulator. I'll do it. I'm smaller. I can get close without blocking the energy flow. Ryan, Kaylee's began, but he had already climbed into the stabilizer frame. He grabbed the cracked regulator and braced his body against the metal plates. He felt the intense heat rising through the stone. His hands trembled, but he held firm. Start the charge, he called out. Now. Kaylee hesitated, torn by fear and duty. Norin urged her. If he says now, we must trust him. With a deep breath, Kaylee released a focused beam of her inner fire into the core socket, powering the stabilizer. The frame shook. Energy surged like lightning through the cables. Ryan felt the regulator struggling, vibrating violently in his hands. The crack spread across its surface. Pain shot through his arms as the energy pulsed, almost knocking him back. Hold on, he whispered to himself. Just a little longer. The energy streams around the chasm began to shift. Instead of spiraling wildly, they started pulling inward, forming a stable pattern. The stabilizer responded, glowing brighter. Suddenly, the regulator shattered halfway, but Ryan held the remaining piece tightly, using his own weight to keep it aligned. The force slammed into him, and he cried out in pain. Ryan! Kaylee roared, leaping toward him. Stay back, he shouted. It's working. And it was. The ley lines pulsed steadily now. The violent tremors softened. The light in the chasm stabilized, turning from chaotic red to a calm orange glow. The stabilizer released a final surge of energy, and then everything grew quiet. The chasm stopped shaking. Ryan collapsed forward, losing his grip, but Kaylee leapt in time and caught him gently in her claws. He was barely conscious, breathing weakly. Is it done? She asked softly. Norin looked out over the chasm. The once wild streams of energy moved in a slow, controlled rhythm. It is done, he said. Kaylee held Ryan close, her voice shaking. You saved us. You saved our world. Ryan tried to answer, but only a faint smile appeared on his face before he drifted into unconsciousness. The sky above Eldrath was changing. For the first time in many generations, the heavy clouds began to thin. Weak sunlight pushed through, touching the land with a soft golden glow that had almost been forgotten. The dragons standing at the edge of Heartfire Chasm watched in silence, hardly believing what they were seeing. Norrin spread his wings slowly, feeling the warm air rise from below. It felt different, calmer, steadier. The planet no longer trembled under their feet. The violent shaking that had once threatened to tear the world apart was gone. "The core is stable," he said quietly. "I can feel it." Kayleigh held Ryan close against her chest as she stepped away from the chasm. His breathing was weak but steady. His clothes were burned, and his arms were marked with dark red lines where the energy had struck him. She looked down at him with a mix of fear, relief, and something deeper she could not name. The other dragons gathered around them. Some bowed their heads in respect. Others simply stared, unsure how to express the gratitude they felt. "He did what we could not," one of the elders whispered. "A single human saved us all." Elder Virith arrived last, walking with slow but steady steps. His scales reflected the renewed light in the sky. He looked at Ryan for a long moment before speaking. "Bring him to the high roost," he said gently. "He should rest where the air is clean and warm." Kayleigh nodded and began the careful walk uphill. The dragons cleared a path for her, bowing as she passed. No dragon had ever bowed to a human before. As they climbed, the land around them continued to change. The once cracked ground started to close. The deep red glow in the cracks faded. Plants that had withered and turned gray now straightened as small sparks of life returned to their roots. Norrin followed close behind, keeping watch. He was still shaken by how close they had all come to losing everything. He looked over the recovering land and spoke softly. "It feels like the world is breathing again." "Yes," Kayleigh said, "because he held it together when it was falling apart." When they reached the high roost, a group of healers waited. They gently lifted Ryan from Kayleigh's arms and laid him on a bed of soft woven vines and warm stones. The warmth helped ease his pain, and his breathing grew steadier. The healers worked carefully, cleaning the burns on his arms and placing cool leaf-wrapped compresses on his forehead. Kayleigh stayed nearby, refusing to leave his side. Elder Virith joined her, watching the healers tend to the human. "You cared for him greatly during this journey," he said. Kayleigh lowered her head. "He cared for us first. He came here alone, frightened and hurt, yet he chose to help creatures he had never met. Creatures who once believed humans were too weak to matter." Virith let out a low breath. "We were wrong about them, or perhaps we were wrong about him. He is different." Kayleigh turned her gaze to Ryan. "He is brave and kind. He could have run away. He could have refused. But he stayed and fought for our world." Virith nodded slowly. "The world will know his name. The hatchlings will learn his story. And our future will be shaped by the choices he made today." As time passed, more dragons gathered at the high roost. They stood in quiet circles, watching the slow return of blue sky above. Some dragons lifted into the air, soaring with joy as they felt the warm breeze again. Others touched their claws to the stone in silent thanks. Norrin sat near Kayleigh, his wings tired but relaxed. "I never thought I would live to see the sky clear," he said. "None of us did," she replied. He looked at Ryan and smiled softly. "He will want to see this when he wakes. We must tell him. He should know what he saved." Kayleigh nodded, feeling something brighten in her chest. "He will see it. I will show him myself." As night approached, the sky turned a soft purple instead of the usual burning red. Stars appeared, small, faint, but real. The dragons stared in awe. Many had never seen stars before. Elder Virith raised his voice, deep and steady. "Eldrath lives," he announced. "And we owe our survival to the human who gave everything he had, with no promise of reward, no duty, and no certainty of success. Only kindness." Dragons bowed their heads in respect. Kayleigh looked down at Ryan, peaceful in his rest, and whispered, "You changed our world, Ryan. And now we will protect you, just as you protected us." The first light of morning spread across Eldrath, soft and warm, touching everything with a calm glow. The world no longer trembled. The air no longer burned. For the first time in a very long time, the planet felt safe. Ryan opened his eyes slowly, blinking against the gentle sunlight. His body ached, and his arms felt heavy, but he was alive. He lay on a bed of woven vines and smooth warm stones. The sense of clean air and blooming plants drifted around him. When he tried to sit up, a large shadow moved beside him. Kaylee's lowered her head, her eyes bright with relief. "You are awake," she said softly. Ryan gave a small nod. Did it work?" Kaylee stepped aside so he could see. Beyond the high roost balcony, green fields stretched toward the horizon. The sky was a clear blue, dotted with small white clouds. A gentle breeze moved through the recovering trees. The land that had once cracked and burned was now quiet and whole. Ryan stared in disbelief. "I can't believe it. You saved Eldrath," Kaylee said. "Your courage brought our world back from the edge." Norrin approached with a wide, proud smile. "And the tremors have stopped completely. The stabilizer holds strong. Elder Virith says the core is finally resting." Ryan let out a shaky breath. "Good. I'm glad." He tried to stand, but his legs trembled. Kaylee's gently lifted him with one clawed hand, steadying him until he found his balance. As he stood, he noticed dozens of dragons gathered around the roost. They bowed their heads to him, their wings folded in respect. Ryan swallowed, overwhelmed. "You don't have to do that. You are the one who saved our future," Elder Virith said as he stepped forward. "That is not something we can ignore." Virith lifted a golden crest-shaped stone. Smooth, polished, and warm with inner light. "This is the Heartstone of Eldrath," he said. "It is given only to those who have shaped the fate of our world. No dragon has received it in centuries. Now we give it to you." Ryan stared at the stone, unsure what to say. Kaylee's watched him with a soft look. "You deserve it," she said. Virith placed the Heartstone gently into Ryan's hands. The stone glowed with a warm pulse, almost like a heartbeat. "Thank you," Ryan whispered. For a long moment, everyone remained quiet, letting the calm of the new morning settle around them. Then Sereth swooped down, excitement in her voice. "Come outside," she said. "You must see the valley. New streams are forming, fresh water. Real water." Ryan laughed for the first time in days. Kaylee's helped him walk to the cliff edge. Below, small rivers were beginning to flow, clear and bright, weaving through the reborn land. "I never thought I'd see something like this," Ryan said. "You made it possible," Kaylee's replied. He felt a gentle nudge on his shoulder as Norrin spoke again. "And you will stay with us, won't you? Eldrath is your home now, too." Ryan looked at the vast landscape before him. The dragons soaring in the sky, the land healing, the warmth returning. "Maybe just for a while," he said with a smile. "I want to see what your world becomes." Kaylee's lowered her head beside him, her voice warm. "Then we will show you everything." As the sun rose higher, the dragons spread their wings. Some soared upward, celebrating the rebirth of their world. Others stayed close, watching over the new streams and growing fields. Ryan took a deep breath of the fresh, clean air. He had come to Eldrath alone, hurt, and afraid. Now he stood in a world he had helped save. A world that had accepted him, trusted him, and honored him. And as the first true blue sky in centuries stretched across the horizon, Ryan knew one thing for certain. This was not the end of his story. This was the beginning of a new future, for him, for Kaylee's, and for all of Eldrath.